Hello, and welcome back to Neotopia, the podcast. I am your teacher and host, Jillian Mason Shannon, and today we're doing part one of our little series of human consciousness in the Bible, starting with Adam and Eve.
Now listen to me. You can make of yourself anything you want. It's up to you. A man has a choice. That's where he's different from an animal. You don't listen. You'll never remember.
That was a clip from the movie East of Eden, which is an adaptation of the book by John Steinbeck. In the book, Adam Trask is the father to twin boys, Cal and Aaron. The names in the story are meant to recall Adam of Adam and Eve, and their two twin boys, Cain and Abel, in the Bible. It is a modern retelling of that very story. Now, some backstory from the book that wasn't in the movie. The reason Adam Trask has this insight to tell his son that humans have a choice is because he and two of his friends in the book get into some really fun existential conversations, and they get really involved in biblical interpretation. And one of them, the Chinese servant Li, he spends years stuck on this one moment in the story of Cain and Abel, in which God tells Cain, you shall overcome sin. And Li does the responsible thing that one must do when reading the Bible. He compares translations, and the King James Version says, thou shalt overcome sin. In the newer American Standard Version, the translation is, thou must overcome sin. And then he decides to go back to the source. He's like, okay, these two are saying different things. What was the original language? Hebrew. Let's learn Hebrew. And he went back and he discovers that what it originally said may be the most important, beautiful word in the world, timshel, which means thou mayest overcome sin. This tiny little word makes a world of difference. Thou shalt implies predestination. God already knows what will happen, and we're mere puppets in the play. And this removes our agency. Thou must implies an order, a command. We must or else. And then we throw our weight into obedience and neglect our own discernment out of fear for this ruler God. But thou mayest, that implies a choice. We might or we might not. The way is open, and the responsibility is on us. Now, people are quick to debate over the validity of Steinbeck's translation, not unlike the ways in which we debate the validity of most biblical stories. Take the story of Adam and Eve. We get so stuck debating whether or not it was historically factual that we fail to wrestle with the truth. The story of Adam and Eve is true for you, it's true for me, it's true for every human that ever lived, just as it was true for the first humans to gain this level of human consciousness. And that consciousness is being reflective creatures rather than simply reflexive. Adam and Eve are suitable names to give these characters because Adam in the Hebrew, means earthling, earth creature, and Eve means life. The story of Adam and Eve, in brief, is that Yahweh, who is God personified in the story, is walking around the Garden of Eden, this paradise, beautiful garden of trees, fruits, rivers, all one could need for a flourishing life, and then creates the earth creature, Adam, and tells him he may eat from any tree of the garden, except this one toward the center, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Stay away from that one. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his fabulous book, Creation and Fall, explains that in the Hebrew, see a theme, we're going back to Hebrew original translations, the tree is called the tree of Tob and Ra. which actually translates to the tree of pleasure and pain. This changes our understanding from the tree of morality, understanding morality in a new way, good and evil, to understanding our experience of life in a new way. Now, the woman is created to be a suitable partner for Adam, to help him in his job of tilling the fields and naming everything on the earth. And by the way, she was created after the prohibition of do not eat from this tree. Didn't hear that directly, just saying. Is approached then by a serpent who convinces her that eating from the tree is just fine, and it'll actually make you more like God, which she discerns is a good thing. And so she eats and she gives some to Adam as well. In this theological discourse between Eve and the serpent says, you will not die. You will become like God. So God's words, in which God says, eat from this tree and you will die, is now pit against this creature's words. And both are true. No, they will not die a literal death, but they will experience a death of who they are now and enter into a new realm of existence. See, once we gained this level of awareness of pleasure and pain, we became internally split. We can no longer experience one without the other. The most pleasurable things in life are also the most painful because we know that they're fleeting. The greater the love, the greater the loss. And by a result of this level of understanding, we begin grasping for life. Notice that Yahweh didn't forbid Adam to eat from the tree of life. There were two trees in the middle of the garden, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of pleasure and pain. Wouldn't you think he would forbid Adam to eat from the tree of life? Well, prior, it wouldn't have even occurred to Adam to grasp for life. He is life. Without this internal split, we can only understand ourselves as connected, as one with each other, God and the natural world. And this state of oneness, of consciousness without the internal split, it's best understood in the poem Adam expresses when the woman is created. This at last is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. There's no pride in her being a part of him, no hierarchy, no demand of control over her. Simply, she now belongs to him because he belongs to her. Oh, baby, baby, we belong together. That's always my favorite day in class at the university, teaching Adam and Eve, because at play, We Belong Together by Mariah Carey as they walk in. And who doesn't want to start their day with a little Mariah? But the internally split part of us sees the other not as a part of us to rejoice in, but as a separate thing that is either a resource or a threat to our flourishing. Therefore, everything and everyone becomes scapegoats. Exhibit A. The moment the humans speak to Yahweh after eating from that tree, they employ the scapegoat mechanism. Adam says, she made me do it. And she says, the serpent made me do it. They're scapegoating one another. And here begins a primary central theme of the entire biblical narrative, that of sacrificing others for our sake. Should we talk about the curse?
I curse the day you were born!
As the story goes, Yahweh realizes that they disobeyed and ate from the forbidden tree and begins to lay out the consequences. Work will now be sweating and toiling. Women will feel pain in childbirth. Women will be subordinate to men, and so on, so on. Sounds like a description of reality, doesn't it? Now, we can understand this as inherited eternal punishment for a human eating a piece of fruit hundreds of thousands of years ago. Or we can see that God is explaining the natural consequences of living a life internally split, of living with the knowledge of Tob and Ra. Childbirth, work, relations with others are not just parts of life, but experiences in which we are capable of feeling immense pain. We'll see each other as separates and therefore scapegoats. Man may enforce dominance over woman, justifying that the text says woman was made from man. But may we all realize that this explanation of the consequences is not the end of the story. When Yahweh created Adam, he gave him an important job: to name everything. Name the cow, cow. Name the river, river. This is true of us today, isn't it? Our level of consciousness gives us language, symbolic language, which makes us responsible for naming everything in the world. And immediately after this long list of terrible, nasty consequences, Adam does the strangest thing. He resumes his job of naming. He looks to his partner, the woman, and gives her a name: Eve, which means life. You'd think after all that he might have some other choice names for her, but he doesn't. He names her Life, mother of all things living. That means even of him. That's quite the opposite of woman being subordinate to man. And this causes Yahweh to change too. He goes back to his language of tilling the fields rather than toiling, and he makes garments of clothes for them. See, when they rapidly dressed themselves to cover their nakedness and shame, they chose uncomfortable, prickly loincloths. God now begins the new role of a caretaker, like a parent dressing their children in suitable clothes and sending them on their way. What a powerful intro to the rest of the Bible. A centuries-long drama of human experience, of people figuring out how to relate to one another and to God in this life that is both broken and beautiful, fallenness and grace, pleasure and pain. This act of grace by Adam shows a lot about the human condition. It also says a lot about God. Is God unchangeable? Or does God, as the one eternal, all-inclusive whole of reality, evolve with us, suffer with us? Has God predestined our outcomes, demanded our outcomes? Or do humans have choices, and God is along the way to help us persevere? Let's continue to evaluate these dynamics in the next few episodes on the evolution of human consciousness in the biblical narrative.